Deloitte, his presentation was to be made today because he's going to address challenges related with are we going to start with Sam or the gentleman from Deloitte? I think we're going to start with the gentleman from Deloitte. Correct? Okay, because I think the presentation from Sam is already here. So I think let us start with the story of Zero Trust Maturity Model, improving threats, informed visibility. This is what I've seen. So welcome, Sam. And at the end of all this presentation, we'll be able to do some Q&A. I'll ask you a few questions. And later on, I'll open the floor from the audience so that at least we can also have questions to our three presenters. Sam, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And hopefully, we'll get a clicker to advance the slides. So I appreciate this opportunity to come visit with you for a few moments today. Yes. And we'll talk through a handful of ideas and concepts here around Zero Trust. We'll start with some definitions. We'll move into some of the opportunities that presents and talk about some AI. We will see if I can convince this thing to advance. Okay, so we'll start with three different definitions, and these matter. Zero Trust is more of a concept or an idea, so there is not a single definition that works for all cases. So here, NIST defines Zero Trust, a collection of concepts and ideas designed to minimize uncertainty and enforcing accurate, least privilege per request access decisions. NIST goes on further to talk about, if we can get it to advance. No. We jump forward 3. A Zero Trust architecture being an enterprise cybersecurity plan that uses Zero Trust concepts and encompasses component relationships, workflow planning, and access policies. So it's both physical and virtual. And operational policies that are in place for an enterprise as a product of a Zero Trust architecture plan. NSTAC further defines this. This one I think is perhaps the most helpful or applicable definition, that a cybersecurity strategy premised on the idea that no user or asset is to be implicitly trusted. It assumes that a breach has already occurred or will occur. Therefore, a user should not be granted access to sensitive information based on a single verification done at the enterprise perimeter. So Zero Trust becomes this idea that instead of having a castle wall with a gate and a moat, where we put all of our firewalls and all of our authentication, all of our VPN access, instead of putting all of those details at the edge, and then once you've connected or made your authentication, you're able to do whatever you need to inside. Zero Trust is this idea that we need to have continuous validation, continuous verification for each asset and each application. I've spent long enough doing security assessments and doing pen testing and doing red teaming to realize that our castles are not very strong in the first place. Or our traditional approaches a lot more like a sandcastle. Unfortunately, we're one bad wave away from having catastrophe and loss of data or loss of privacy with our access. So the Zero Trust Maturity Model presents an alternative way of framing this for us to better understand how we're doing and how we can improve our cybersecurity systems. So within the Zero Trust Maturity Model, there are 5 pillars identified, and you'll note that each of these pillars from bottom to top then has different maturity levels. So the 5 pillars being identity, devices, networks, applications and workloads, and data. Each of these different pillars provides opportunities for us to do policy decision point and policy enforcement points. And that maturity grows from traditional, initial, advanced to optimal for each of those pillars. But the landscape that we live in isn't so graceful or clean. So some laws of cybersecurity physics, we've got this complexity or this challenge, the conflict. Complexity is at odds with security. An external threat can be just one breach or one compromise away from being an internal threat. So Zero Trust is trying to primarily address the second bullet. Effective control should be redundant, always invoked, independent implementations, non-bypassable. We've got some of these realities that we all exist in as we try to deliver our services and provide our opportunities. And our SOC is along for the ride. And default permit and enumerating badness, those are really dumb ideas, mostly being they're really challenging to try to implement, being able to enumerate badness. So the maturity levels, and you can search for this right now. You can go out to CIS's website and look for a Zero Trust Maturity Model. And so these 5 columns represent those 5 pillars. So within each pillar, you can have independent maturity, and your risk management effectiveness is based on that lowest maturity achieved across the pillars. Some pillars are a lot more difficult than others. Some things like device and network have had a long history of us trying to do a better job. Things like identity and data are perhaps less mature as far as a marketplace and as far as our own implementations to be able to help those systems. So here's the question for you. Which one's better? The bank vault or the screen door? And just like everything else with this maturity model, the answer that your management might not be happy with is it depends, right? Depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to keep out a mosquito, then the bank vault is probably not your better option. You're better off going with just the screen door. So the Zero Trust Maturity then becomes a journey. We don't try to purport that all 5 pillars need to be developed all the way till they're optimal. That's not realistic. Nobody can afford to have each of these identity, device, data. We can't afford to have all of those matured and developed and deployed all the way to the optimal level. So each pillar then can match the maturity that's required based on your own risk tolerance and your own data sensitivities. I'd be remiss without reminding us that at the bottom, we also have these cross-functional areas. These include visibility and analytics, automation and orchestration, and governance. So across each of these 5 pillars, we have some of these common capabilities that each of those pillars needs to incorporate and participate in. So Zero Trust ultimately requires this shift in our mindset from a location-centric cybersecurity model to an identity, context, and data-centric approach with those fine-grained security controls between users, systems, applications, data, and assets. But the Zero Trust Maturity Model has some gaps. It does not identify details on incident response, logging, monitoring, alerting, forensic analysis, risk acceptance. So our monitoring priorities then need to focus on 2 primary different dimensions. First, the attackers, what can they do within your controls? These are the so-called living off the land attacks. They're not bringing exploits. They're not misbehaving or exploiting applications or software. They're instead using the access that they've been granted, perhaps for unintended ways. And then the second dimension there being, what can attackers do to bypass your controls? So in these cases, I'd point you toward MITRE and their definition of attack techniques. This picture here is just trying to illustrate, if you lock your front door, the attacker might decide to just come through the window instead. So we have this sliding spectrum as well between enumerating badness and enumerating goodness. Because ultimately there will be some trust. And so this idea behind zero trust is that you enumerate the goodness. It's the default deny, permit by exception. Your detection will always leverage some degree of that enumerating goodness. And mature zero trust enables more reliance on that right end of the spectrum. Because this graph is really helpful for us to visualize. So on the far left tail, we haven't turned on enough logging yet. We haven't identified, we haven't turned on enough firewall logs. They're not verbose enough. We don't have endpoint logs or identity logs. At the peak, we've got the sweet spot where our security team is getting the visibility they need. They can process the inputs that are being received. They can do alert triage and incident management. And then, unfortunately, at the far right end, we've turned on too much logging. We're overwhelming our teams. They're getting too many alerts per day to be able to process and keep track of. And so the analysts and tools are overwhelmed. There's too much data volume. They can't keep pace. So that we're trying to stay in this balance of just enough visibility to keep pace with our tools and our teams. And this is where AI starts to play a role. So each of these 5 pillars then feeds into security relevant events. Those security relevant events then are processed using analytics and using AI. From those, we flag notable events which generate incident tickets that are then processed by your teams to identify the confirmed incidents. So with zero trust, we're dramatically increasing the volume of logs that are going to be generating these security relevant events. As our systems mature and we layer on more and more protections, data volumes and velocities will outpace our capacity if we're not careful with our processing and analytics. Just quickly, the OODA loop, so the observe, orient, decide, act. With the observe side, this is when your data and your logs are first being generated. We've got to spend our time doing our quick observation near real time, based on hours and days. When you move to that orientation phase, that's where we spend most of our time and energy as incident responders. We spend our time trying to figure out how broad was the breach, how much data may have been lost, how much information was there, what did they use to get in. That orient phase ends up being most time consuming. That's where we can, instead of keeping all of the logs always in hot data storage, you move them quickly from that hot storage during this observe phase all the way to cold. There's very little demand for having data stored in a warm storage class. So just a final quick thought. So with distributed analytics, we are able to spread that work out. You can have multiple hunters that are all going after the same attacker. We don't have to aggregate all of the data back to a single location for processing. If we can push that work out to those aggregation points or out to the edge, we can better share the load to get the work done. That also allows us to do some pre-screening before the data gets pulled back to our SIM tools, so that we can have more realistic data processing requirements. But when you do that, when you don't centralize all the data, you also don't centralize the analytics. You can distribute that work as well. Absolutely build a data strategy. Allows you to collect and analyze that volume of information. This is a quick video. I don't know if this is going to work. Nope. Can we have the folks in the back click that video for us? There you go. So don't get stuck in a rut. Don't be like this sheep, where you decide that we're going to implement a bunch of zero trust, and we finally get out of this ditch. We finally get out of the rut. Don't go back to thinking that you just need more security tools. You just need more security funding. Don't go back to thinking that security is all about one product or one solution. Don't go back to thinking that more logs will always improve your security outcomes. And do move forward applying zero trust methodologies and maturity models. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. And now let me call Stephen Wangwe to give us also a short presentation, and then finally we'll finish with a friend from Deloitte.
A very good morning to all of you. So yes, while they're putting up my presentation, I'm Engineer Stephen Wangwe. I'm the Director for Communication Safety and IT Security at the Ministry, but I'll be assuming this role for this week, for my last moment in the role. From next week, I'll be serving as the Director for Registration and Compliance under the Personal Data Protection Commission. So you know, I'm very fond in cybersecurity, but I think I will be practicing it in a bit of a different domain. But as a security expert, I will still be along with my cybersecurity natives. So yesterday we were talking about artificial intelligence, and it was being presented in so many different domains. We saw in the gaming environment, we saw in the geospatial, we saw in so many applications. So AI is basically a technique which can be used everywhere. This morning we're going to discuss how AI could be used in cybersecurity. So basically AI advances or enhances utilization of different technologies in different setups. The future of cybersecurity, I will be presenting on how I think we should be using a human-AI partnership. I think AI is very powerful, but I will present the challenges that are posed with AI, which call upon us to see how to use it, but also how we can make this partnership between AI and human to make it more relevant and more useful to us. So you see the padlock there? The padlock is basically security in a human context. And the brain there is the artificial intelligence, which we embedded through the artificial applications. Those two, when they have a partnership, it becomes very powerful. So I'll go through just an introduction. I won't dwell in too much, but it's why are we even doing cybersecurity? And then I will move to the benefits of AI in cybersecurity. Then I will touch on two challenges. What are the challenges in the cybersecurity with respect to AI? I will explain the applications of AI in cybersecurity, importance of human intervention or human factor. And then I will conclude by saying what I think we should be the way forward. So to start with, So as we all know, there are so many challenges in the cyber landscape. And every day, the criminals are trying to find ways of infiltrating or ways of penetrating into the systems. These criminals have chosen a life. This is a career. And if you want to bet on that, you can go to the underweb or the dark web and spend like 5 minutes. Then you'll understand that this is a community which is there to stay. So every now and then, they're doing research on how can we penetrate, how can we hack, how can we do that. And they sell these things which are compromised in this dark web. So it's a big business, and it will be there. So on the side of the upper side of the surface of the web is where we are supposed to protect you users who have genuine cause, who have clean intent. But on and on, we've been using the traditional cybersecurity measures, whereby we have antivirus, we have firewalls, we have cyber ROMs, we have the IPS, IDS, but with these technology changes and the technology advancements, these criminals are coming with different dimensions. Already they're using AI to deploy their exploits. So in order for us to be relevant, we have to change how we protect the systems. Defense in depth. You can see in the physical environment, let's take in our houses, you can have a fence, and then on the fence, someone can install an electric fence. But again, when you enter into the compound, again, the house has doors. Some of them have metal doors, again, and then a wooden door. But still, they would have a dog maybe moving around, and a watchman. Again, they will still have cameras. So there are different things that are being put in place to ensure security. Not only one can work alone. So even in the cybersecurity context, usually we have the policies, we have the procedures, we do awareness to the users, we put password policy, make sure you change your policy, your password every after so and then, make sure your password has this and this character so that it can be a strong password. But also we do the physical checks where we put IDs so that we know who can access the compound. But again, we put security on the network, making sure there's no sniffing or there's no any penetration in the network or leakage, because sometimes someone can do man-in-the-middle attack, or they could be hearing whatever the packets are passing between the network. But also at the computer level, again, we put some protection, whereby we have the firewalls, the cyber ROMs, and going to the application, again, even the application itself has the security. That's where we have the pins, the passwords, but again, we still have the antivirus or special programs which protect the application. And finally, it reaches to the device. So these are layers of mitigation that are put in order to increase the security. This concept is called defense in depth. But again, this one is still a traditional way of protecting the cyber space. You bear with me, there's a bit of a latency. Okay. Yeah, so you know, when we look at security, we usually look at the back end mostly. But nowadays, these hackers and criminals, they've noticed that we have not put any focus in the domain name, whereby you put a name of a website. You know, when you insert the keys of a website, let's say www.cnn.com, for example, that's what you see as a user. But behind that, those texts are converted into some certain numbers, which can communicate with the back end of the system provisioning. So the hackers have known that that's an area which us who do cybersecurity or who defend our networks don't concentrate on. So they usually use this one as a channel or as a means to deploy their attacks, whereby they can use the DNS to establish covert communication with the command and control and targeted networks. This is a technique which is usually successful most of the time, and it's because the security people don't think of it as important as it is. So whenever a place or a thing is considered not important to the security experts, that's an opportunity to the exploiters or to the hackers. And bad enough, they are using advanced proactive means to infiltrate the system through the DNS. And this is why we are calling upon intervention of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Because this aspect or this technique has several advantages. The first one is the ability to predict and prevent potential attacks by analyzing vast amounts of data in real time. So there's a lot that is going on, but you can't really see everything. For example, take it as you have a very big building and you have maybe like 50 cameras. So if you have 50 cameras, it means you'll be having 50 screens. How are you going to be able to see something that is happening in screen number 24, for example? And maybe at the same time, things could be happening in 4 or 5 different screens at the same time. So the human ability cannot see such a thing, meaning that if you depend on the human eye, it will be a loophole because you won't be able to catch up. So the same environment is in the cyberspace. A lot is going on, a lot is happening on real time, and we cannot be able to see everything at a go. So this is where we need artificial intelligence and machine learning. You just need to tell it what you want it to tell you when it sees, or how should it behave when it sees a certain characteristic. Another characteristic is the ability to enhance threat intelligence by aggregating and analyzing data from various sources, providing a comprehensive view of threat landscape. So in security, your best catch is knowing what is happening or what is going on. And a fraction of a millisecond can cause you a very big damage. So you should not miss anything. So with AI and machine learning intervention, it is possible to make sure or to avoid overlooking any important part. The third characteristic is that AI is revolutionizing automation of routine security tasks. A human being can overlook or can oversee a small task, but which could be a very sensitive task. But also it frees up human resource to focus on more complex issues. Security should be looked at a way which is strategic. You shouldn't be looking at like micromanagement or like very small way. I think my moderator is communicating. Is it time? All right, thanks. So I call upon deploying zero trust cybersecurity strategy, which my fellow panelists had presented the model. But basically, it's a strategy whereby you should always verify. Even if the person is an insider, again, you should verify every time. I will not dwell into that, so I can... this button is really taking my time. Okay, so the benefits of artificial intelligence in cybersecurity, the first one is enhanced threat detection. As I said, the feature of being able to collect information and analyzing it at real time enables enhanced threat detection. The second one is real-time incident response. As you know that when you get an incident, the best catch is making sure that you bring back the service as soon as possible. So with AI, it is possible to enable real-time incident response so that the outage becomes very minimal. And the third one, improved user authentication. In the authentication part, I should really know this is so-and-so, but sometimes because of human character, you can authenticate, but the problem is that you could use like, I know this is Yusuph Kileo, so no problem, but not knowing that he could be impersonated. So with AI, it is more effective in improving the user authentication. So there you go. What are the challenges? The challenges with AI in cybersecurity are in mainly three categories. The first one is adversarial attacks on AI, whereby I purposely feed wrong information to the AI engine so that it can give wrong output. And remember that the AI works on the database information that is in the engine. So when it has wrong information, it means even the people who are using, when they use it in the future, they will be getting wrong answers. So this is an attack, or it's a way that cybersecurity or cyber criminals can misuse the AI technology. But also the privacy and ethical concerns. People are doing their dissertations, people are asking very personal questions, they are violating their privacy. They just don't know that that information is being stored somewhere. So in the future, there'll be a lot of exposures because people ask questions to the AI in a way they don't know that sometimes they're compromising their privacy. And the third one is the skills gap. Of course, we talked about this yesterday, but also the infrastructure. Because with AI, you need to have very huge storage devices, but also you have to have very powerful processing computing equipment in order to make it work. So again, it is very critical that we make sure we customize these things, because you can have biased applications, but at the same time, people could be getting wrong information, whereby these hackers could do misinformation or disinformation through AI just because of negligence of people or taking advantage of the database being far from our reach. So I want to explain these type of adversarial attacks because of time. So what are the applications of AI in cybersecurity? The first one is that AI can make AI-powered autonomous security system. As it was explained yesterday, AI is a technology which could basically do anything. You just need to feed it and direct it how you want. So it adapts quickly. Some of you have used ChatGPT, and sometimes it can make, or it can start speaking in a way that you like. You can see like autocomplete messages. It writes the way you want. 2 minutes, I'm finishing. It reduces human error. It enhances efficiency. But also it brings continuous improvement because it is continuously analyzing real-time data and improving continuously. So this is an advantage of application of AI. But another one is that it's predictive analysis for threat detection, because it spontaneously analyzes upcoming data. And this is a combination of big data analytics and machine learning. Another one is that it is very powerful in dealing with zero-day vulnerabilities, which unfortunately I won't talk of because I don't have that much time. But I just want to quickly go to the importance of human intervention and conclude my presentation. So the first key factor whereby we need human intervention in this is strategic thinking and decision making. This is something that the AI cannot do, and you need the human being, because sometimes the context changes, there's a specific need of a tradition. So this is whereby the human intervention is needed. But another aspect which calls for the human intervention is the contextual understanding, because the human being understands the fellows, but he also understands what is a priority at that time and moment, which definitely the AI cannot know. So the questions such as why, what, where, those are things which need human intervention. And the third and last one is ethical and legal consideration. Sometimes, depending on who programmed the AI, they may not have embedded the ethical and legal considerations. But the legal things, they change every now and then, and they're very contextual. So with the human intervention and human judgment, it is very important to have that so it can be taken on board. The last one is adaptability and innovation. As you know, it is important that continuous creativity and improvement will be going on. The human being is the one who created the AI in the first place. So the human being can enhance the AI more than the AI itself. So to conclude, I say that it is very important, as Sam said, not to be using the same style. Security is something that should be in the mindset that every time you should always apply a zero trust methodology. And with AI, you have to integrate it with human intervention for it to be effective. Having said that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wangwe. Just a quick reminder, all this beautiful presentation will be also available later. So I think you will still have those presentations. Now to Williams. He's also going to talk of the emerging challenges and the potential use cases of these artificial intelligence. William, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you to our officials, our sponsors, our diplomats. I'm really honored to be presenting here today. And Mr. Moderator, we're in the age of AI, so you don't need to send me notes. Just, do a wave or something. I'll keep an eye on you in terms of, my time and so on. I'll try to go quick because AI is everywhere, right? We've heard a whole conference on it yesterday about where AI is and where AI can be used. And often we think it's only in the last sort of year since ChatGPT has been released. But AI has been influencing our lives for the last 5 years. Whether you're looking at Facebook, your Facebook feeds, whether you're applying for a bank loan, whether you're going for a product on your telecommunications providers, all of these are informed by AI. And today, I want to talk about what I call connected intelligence. You had the right one there. It's the connected intelligence one there, just a few slides back. I'm just helping the audiovisual guys to get to the right presentation. I'll tell you, that one. So, what has happened in the last year that has changed this? Why is AI suddenly now so big? Now, I'm glad I'm speaking third because the previous presenters has already told you that there's value in AI, and even in AI protecting ourselves. But there's value in the human-AI connection. And that's what I want to talk about. Because AI has done two things in the last year and a half. It can now understand us at a human level. We can talk to it. It's no more, push a button here, press 1 if you want to do this. No. In a human way, you can speak to AI and it will understand it. The second thing is anybody can now do something digital. When we started this process at Deloitte a year and a half, they asked us to explain generative AI in a way that would make sense to your grandmother. And I couldn't. But the cameraman that was filming us could. And I asked him, so why do you know so much about generative AI? And he says he uses it every day. This was a year and a half ago. He creates training videos for a big mining company. And he used to have to design the scene, then go to the software developer, then the software developer will create it in the Unreal 3D animation engine. What he does now, he goes to ChatGPT. He says, here's my scene, please give me the code. He copies the code, pastes it in the engine, it's done. So what happens to the software developer? And that's often the fear we have, right? Will I lose my job? Is something's going to change? So what does that software developer have to do? And what has happened sort of since, the sort of beginning of how digital technology has changed is, if I can get to my next slide, we used to be reliant on nature, right? So nature produces. We used to look at the weather, when is the rain coming, and then we throw our seeds. So it wasn't up to us, it was up to nature to produce. Now in companies today, we still have executives that's waiting for the weather before they act. But what then happened is we wanted more control. So we created factories. We created, let's take the raw material, let's do something with it. We created all this process automation. And then we even went a step beyond and said, okay, we can now digitally maintain this. So our creativity is what is producing new content. What is happening today is that what we've produced, AI is now creating stuff. It's creating poems, recipes, presentations, new images, new videos. So what are we supposed to do? But the key thing here is that actually that AI production, meaning that AI consistency with the human creativity, with the human emotion. And the third thing that we often miss is the innovative processes. So don't just think I'm going to introduce AI in my government or in my institution. You have to understand what's the process to make sure that AI gets adopted and to make sure that AI actually works. Because AI can be used everything. We've heard about AI in cybersecurity. It's a big thing because it helps you to scale. It helps you to do more. It helps you to look at the granular logging transactions that humans would miss. And if AI is so important, what do we therefore need to do to make sure that we actually use it? Because AI has been there everywhere. We've known about computer vision since the early 90s when those CCTV cameras was introduced. We've known about speech recognition since the mid-2000s when we said, hi Siri or hi Alexa, please play me music. We've known about natural language processing since there was speech recognition. So AI has been there. So what are we, particularly as on the African continent, supposed to do to actually make use of this? But let's pause a little bit, right? Let's just take a few steps back. Because, like I said, AI isn't new. What we wanted to achieve, meaning the value that we want to get, meaning the insights that we want to get so that we as humans can act better, has always been there. It's been in business intelligence, and that was a big thing 10, 15 years ago. It's been in analytics. It's now in artificial intelligence, and it's now in actually generative AI. So if we go back to business intelligence, it created tremendous value because it was answering the question, what has happened? If I as a human know what has happened, I can actually therefore change my actions so that I can have a better outcome. But what was the challenge here, right? The challenge here was the data. So how can I actually get access to the data? How do I make sure that my data is clean so that when it answers the question, what has happened, there's value? So the challenge was data, and that's still a challenge even in this age of AI. Then we went to analytics and we said, okay, we can now do machine learning and we can actually answer the question, why did it happen? But what was the challenge in this? There was tremendous value. Often people speak about 12% revenue uplift. But then we started understanding, okay, data quality is an issue, the data lifecycle is an issue, and again, in this age of AI, it's still a problem we must address. And often I tell people, if you want to do generative AI, make sure your business intelligence and your data is correct, so you've answered the question of data. Make sure your data quality and your data management and your lifecycle management is correct, so you've answered the question of analytics. Then you can go to artificial intelligence. where artificial intelligence will now answer the question, but how can I optimize and make something happen? Right? How do I take this analytics, and if we take the cybersecurity example, all these logging incidents, analytics that come from that, and now I understand, okay, there is a gap in my firewall, let's go address that. So how do I use it and optimize what I do? And the challenge here is the use cases. How do I actually make sure that people in the business departments can adopt it? Whether I'm doing network optimization in the telcos, whether I'm doing fraud management in banking, whether I'm doing AI-based billing in finance, all of these use cases, the challenge is the adoption by business departments. That's why you often have to bring change management along with your AI initiatives. Then we get into the generative AI phase where now we can actually create what should happen. So we can tell AI to create us something that changes our actions. So it's not just us as humans that act. As our previous speaker said, you take that human adaptability, innovation, and you marry that with the robustness of an AI, and suddenly you can scale your actions across all incidents, across all transactions, across your whole life. So if I were to scale AI across my life, what are the things that I need? So if I'm just talking about businesses, you need to think, how do I configure my business? How do I change how my business look like? Because I can now do AI. How do I build new offerings? So let's take a governance example. Maybe you want to create a chatbot that helps your citizens understand, how do I apply for a passport? How do I apply for identification document? How do I check my identity? All of that can be automated. So that's a new offering that you bring into the hands of your clients, your customers, your citizens. And then lastly, how do I reach my customers? So now instead of just having an identification model as part of my government services, I can now actually make it in the language of my people. So not in English, maybe in Swahili, maybe in a local language. You can do that with generative AI. That is, and you don't need to sit there and have translators translate all the documents. It happens automatically just like that. It can happen in real time as you're speaking to the customer. And that is the benefit of generative AI. But you have to bring the human element along with you. So often then, after we've paused, we're like, okay, how do I now actually go further and make sure that it's not just isolated decisions, it's not just integrated decisions. That was analytics, right? Isolated decisions was everybody was looking at their own dashboard and making a decision. Integrated decision was our analytics and our brought all the data together. We always had this one view of the customer, one view of our data. But enhanced decisions means that I can use generative AI to create scenarios, to say, what would happen if we were supposed to do this? And a scenario can be created. Now my decisions is enhanced because I've got my data, my business intelligence, I've got my analytics, but I also have the ability to generate new scenarios. Like in the cybersecurity case, new ways of penetrating my system before the attackers think of it. And now I have enhanced decisions, but I need to know what the benefit is. What is the value of that decision? And that is the key thing in terms of our enterprises. Because if you want to understand what's the value, is the value in terms of transforming my operations. So I have things like touchless IT, quality management, manufacturing processes, all done by AI. Is the value in terms of accelerating my growth? So I have examples of product requirements that can be created by AI. Or product designs, most of the NVIDIA chips is created by AI. New designs that was generative AI created. Is the value in building capabilities? So that software developer, he can now speed up and tell that cameraman, I can do it for you quicker because I understand coding, but I'm using generative AI to create that code for me, and I as human is providing the oversight and the quality management. I as human is providing the decision support. So now, it's not taking my job. I have an enhanced job because I'm augmented by AI. And lastly, the value is in opening new revenue stream, new markets. And there you can have examples of material science. Particularly in Africa, that's important because a whole lot of the new medicines, the new proteins that's created are done by generative AI. Generative AI are finding new medicines and proteins and products because it can go through all of that simulated environments. So the ability to do drug discovery at an affordable rate, meaning you're not hiring hundreds of PhDs, you're actually using a generative AI, is now in the hands of Africa, which means you now have to think, depending on which industry you are, what use case am I doing, right? And I'm just going to use the government and public services in terms of the use cases that are there. So if you think of an intelligent agent that actually helping the citizen get the information of government and do certain actions, like it gets the information in a human language way, in the local language, it actually fills in the information, it fills in the form, so you don't need your citizen to do it. It gets that information. It's the agent that's helping, a government agent, I almost want to say, that's helping the citizen. You can do knowledge management, particularly where in the government sense you have all these different business departments, all have their own performance reports, annual reports, all have their own performance plans. You can now, as the president or government official, actually put that into a generative AI engine and ask questions. How did my Ministry of Health do? What was their annual performance target? Did they miss that target? And the question comes like this. You don't need to trawl through millions of documents to get to that answer. Let's take the last one, disaster recovery and planning. You know, during COVID, how the virus spread could have been analyzed by AI to help us in which areas do we need to intervene before it spreads. Particularly in Africa where, you know, we've got the Rwanda example now with the new virus that came to the fore. How those viruses spread can be analyzed by AI. Different scenarios, different interventions can be planned by AI to help you actually address it, number one, in a clever way, and number two, at scale. And often that's what we as humans struggle with, is to do it at scale. So these are just some examples, and as our moderator said, these presentations will be available so that you can actually go through it. This is my last slide. What decision do you need to make? The decision you need to make is which use case will we implement in my previous slide. The second decision is which agent do we create that will help my client, my citizen, or my customer. Because we're going to live in a world, probably 2-3 years' time, where all of the actions, all of our tasks are done by agents. You will have a computer buddy if you want to buy a new computer. You're not going to go to the shop, have a long discussion with a salesman. You're just going to ask an AI to say, you know, this is my needs, this is what I do, and it will tell you what are the specifications for the right computer. It will tell you, can I now buy this? You click a button, it arrives on your doorstep in 2 days' time. Right? All automated, all done. You will probably have a government access agent that does all of the governance services for me. I don't need to go to a home affairs office. I don't need to go to a health clinic. I can actually ask those questions and get the answers in terms of the governance services that will best meet my needs. You will probably have an investment guru, and you will tell you, no, I've got $100 to save every month. What do I do with it? And it will give you the options and the answers. So all of these will be multiple agents, just like nowadays we're engaging with multiple apps. And the question is, who brings this together? Who regulates this? Because, you know, we'll have niche companies and they'll go outside and you'll see some of them that has created, you know, one of these agents. You'll have the student exhibition and the student exercise where they probably created one of these. So that ring that manages it, you know, we must make sure that government can regulate it. You as big companies must make sure that, where do I play? Do I play in one of these niche agents, or do I play in terms of controlling this ecosystem? Because ultimately, when we are living in this new age, we are managing our lives through AI agents, doing things for us, helping us get knowledge. So it's not a Google search anymore. It's something that an agent does for you. So ultimately, we must understand, how do we as humans interact with these agents? How do we make sure that we can get the value? And if we do that, we will be successful, because this isn't just the age of AI, it's the age of humans plus AI. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. What I've picked from the three presentations, starting with William, AI is not a new thing. It was there for some times. But now what is happening, it's because it's like many people think it's getting out of hand. Deep fake. Someone can mimic you and create a video like you are telling something, but you're not the one who is saying that particular thing. And of course, it brings a lot of advantages. The customer relations that you spoke of, and many other things of note. And then my brother Wangwe, he spoke of AI and how its impact or brings a negative impact to our cyberspace, and also the positive impact to our cyberspace. He spoke of how it's going to enhance the detection, the story of authentications and many other things of note as well. And also from Zero Trust, some spoke of we need to trust no one but verify everything, whether it's from within or from outside, but both need to be well verified. I remember the other time here in Tanzania we have those messages that we normally receive saying that ile pesa, the money that you're supposed to send here, send the money that was supposed to send me now, send on this number. And probably you were about to do a transaction and end up sending it in the wrong number, because what is happening there, we do not verify before we take actions. Now to some. At the center of Zero Trust, then we find data. So how could you advise organizations to get good visibility of their data so that they can be able to, and of course not only data but also activities, so that they can be able to enhance detections when it comes to Zero Trust?
This one. How about that? Okay. So the question is about data. How do we improve? Before you can do a policy decision point to make a policy enforcement, you have to be informed, right? You have to have either metadata or other attributes about the data so that you can make the technical enforcement of policy type decisions that your organization has made. Unfortunately, we're not great at that for data. We're not there yet. Unfortunately, most of our sensitive and not quite sensitive data is commingled. We don't have good mechanisms for automatically tagging data. We can have conventions within our organization, make sure you use this header and footer, this cover sheet. We can have those kind of conventions about proprietary or official use only type labels. And then you can do policy enforcement based on those labels. Unfortunately, at the record level within our data sets or within our AI data sets, we don't have those same mechanisms quite as robust yet. We're not doing as well with data tagging so that we can then do better policy enforcement at that data level. So there are techniques, there are approaches that are being researched. Microsoft has some pretty big initiatives that they're doing for some of their data, but those are not widely adopted, so we haven't yet found the pain points with trying to adopt those. The tension that you face is often from a legal context. You're not allowed to apply some of those labels about data sensitivity unless the data is, no kidding, actually sensitive. Otherwise, you end up over-classifying or over-protecting the content if you anything created here automatically gets labeled proprietary, right? That's not appropriate when you're doing some information sharing. So it's a combination of going to be better data labeling, better education for our user bases, and better alignment with conventions and practices within our organizations. Then our data loss prevention tools, our other tools will have a chance because we'll have the right data tagging and labeling.
Probably the audience or be all from organizations, and one may think, okay, now I want to go and start implementing zero trust to my organizations. And you spoke of a good maturity models and how it works and everything. So one can ask, where do I start? So what should I start with so that I can start now getting into zero trust and be able to do better in my organization?
Yeah, so zero trust, my recommendation is start where you are, right? What I would recommend is you do a self-survey, some self-analysis. You look at the zero trust maturity model pillars, cross-functional areas. You do some self-assessment and say, do we have the right investments in our data pillar? Do we have the right investments in our device pillar? How are we doing on identity? Once you've got some of that orientation, you can find out most of our organizations, we ended up heavily investing in the same area the whole time. And we unfortunately neglect some of those other zero trust pillars. And so by doing some self-assessment, you can better understand if you've got your allocation aligned with your own risk tolerance. And then that can better inform the investments you do need to make going forward.
For those organizations that will try probably to implement zero trust, from your experience, they probably go through challenges. Can you share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So organizations trying to adopt zero trust absolutely face challenges. There are many of those challenges are that cybersecurity realities that we live within, right? That the increase in complexity reduces some of our security. And with the adoption of AI and cloud, these systems are not becoming more simple over time, right? They're absolutely becoming more complex over time. And so as we do that, we need to make sure that the user experience remains with a reduction in friction while we're making it easy to do the secure thing. That's the balance we're trying to strike as security practitioners, right? Is we want it to be easiest to do the secure thing instead of people bypassing our protections to try to get their job done. That doesn't serve anyone, right? So some of those challenges with that adoption are we try to roll out some protections and then we find that those protections don't quite work for people who are doing remote access or working from a hotel. And so we don't have policy enforcement parity. We try to implement firewall policies for our on-prem details and then find out that that didn't get replicated to our branch office properly. And so there's challenges with just the maturing of having centralized control, centralized policy decision points, but then distributing that work for the policy enforcement. And just real quick, I do think that zero trust is an evolution and a maturity of defense in depth. It does not replace it. It advances it and progresses it.
Thank you very much, Sam. Stephen, you spoke a lot of, I saw you mentioned some challenges that AI brought. Now we are having this deep fake. We are having misinformation. It's become now a trouble to many countries. Many people discuss of it in a different way. So what do you think, because what I understand, AI itself can become a solution to that problem, and of course it is also enhance the same thing, the challenge in one way or another. So, on your opinion, what do you think? How do we control? And do you think that we do what do we do in our country so that at least we can experience the benefits of AI, and at the same time we can reduce those challenges that probably AI brought about to our countries and organizations?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kileo, for that question. And again, would speak like cybersecurity experts. As you know, that if you want to secure your platform, you have to think like a hacker, so that you can do the opposite. So AI is the technology which can be used in a good way or in a bad way. So the example of disinformation and misinformation applications is a bad way of using AI. So the first one is to use AI for the good cause, to detect a disinformed or a misinformed content. So this is where we need everyone in the community or in the society to take charge, including the journalists, but also from the supply side, consumers. This is where we can challenge people behind the content development or content monitoring to have AI tools to detect misinformed or disinformed content. So there is no silver bullet to this, but I think the biggest thing to be done is awareness, to inform people to use it, because sometimes people have been scared, because as a new tech comes, it becomes like a disruptive tech. So people tend to shy away from it. So it is us to really get a buy-in so that everyone can understand it and we can have it as a tool to be used by everyone. Because the biggest disadvantage would be whereby people use AI to create misinformed and disinformed content, and the journalists and the community that is consuming wouldn't want to use AI. So that's where we lose, because they would use means which would not be easily detected just by common sense or just by human judgment. So the call is to embrace it, create awareness, and make sure we all use it the right way.
Are there any suggestions, just to add up on the same, are there any suggestions probably you could share with us that you can say, these are 1, 2, 3 things that you probably think if we do it in the right way, it will support or help us to minimize the impact, the negative impact of AI?
I think the biggest one would be very, very comprehensive awareness and capacity building so that people could be using AI for the better cause.
Thank you, Wangwe. William, I think quickly, you spoke. From what I understand, the AI is not a new thing, as I've said earlier. It has been there, and I remember even yesterday I shared with my colleagues that when I was a student back then, we had people were specialized on artificial intelligence. So it's not really something new. But we have seen all this impact today, and many governments started to think of we need to regulate this. So what do you suggest in our African countries? Or is it, are we late? And it's really getting out of hands, or do you think we can still manage and be able to cope up with we now call it emerging technology, the AI?
No, I wouldn't say we are late, because the great thing about digital technologies is that you can often leapfrog. But the mistake we often make on the African continent is that we think we can adopt what was developed elsewhere in our countries, where we should actually invest in local capabilities to develop local-based artificial intelligence. And we've seen many examples of that, across Africa, where, there are actually some companies that were sold to Europe that was developed in Africa that developed AI technologies. On the regulation front, it's actually okay to adopt from elsewhere. So the EU now recently released their AI policy. That is very good in terms of protecting the consumer, making sure that you're not using AI illicitly or in a way that would harm us as humans. That's something that we can take because those principles are human principles, right? It's protecting privacy, it's protecting us. Those principles you can actually adopt and then localize it. So, back to my initial point, the great thing is we can actually take those regulations and adopt it for ourselves. But we have to invest into that capital to do it.
You remind me, one of the fear with AI, people say it's going to infringe our privacy. This is one of the concerns, that it goes beyond a control of, we can do somehow, but they go beyond expectations sometimes. So what do you suggest? How can we, what can we do for us at least to be able to balance between the privacy related issues and at the same time being able to utilize it for us to get those benefits that come along with AI?
So there's a great skill that we as humans have, and that's differentiation, right? You can look at something and you can know, okay, there's something wrong. I don't quite know what's wrong. And that's the skill we must apply when we actually are giving our data. Because it's us giving the data, right? So now we're quite happy, take photos, put it on Instagram, put it on social media. That is data that you are giving away. So we must really, as ourselves, as teaching our kids, learn how do I differentiate, meaning what data do I put up? It's not just everything. It's not every photo I take. It's not all of my information. That is still our decision. So yes, there will be regulation that will protect that data, that would say you can't use that data, but we know what hackers and what the dark web does. But before we give that data, make that differentiation, use that skill to say, is this something I want everybody to know? Like if I'm taking a photo of my kid and I'm putting it on social media, do I need to do that? What photo do I put up? So that is a decision that's still in our human hands. And the better we get at making that differentiation, the better we'll be able to protect ourselves.
The final thing, you were to be on last day presentation, and we spoke about the jobs. People were worried that probably we are going to lose jobs because of AI. Can you share with us quickly at least 3, 4, 5 kind of new jobs that has been created because of AI, this emerging technology?
So I'll go through a few. One is prompt engineering, meaning how do I actually ask the right question to create something? Right? If I go to ChatGPT and ask it to create an image, it's not going to look that good. But I've seen people who studied graphic design ask the right question. I might say, give me a picture of a woman in a room. That graphic design would say, okay, give me a picture of a woman in a room where the angle is at this angle, where the light is doing this, where the color palette is doing that. That's prompt engineering. That's knowing how, and that's a new job. And there's actually companies that are advertising that on LinkedIn. And another job is what we call large language model operations. So all of these things are depending on models that was created, by the big tech companies. Those models need to be managed because there's regularly new data that's being fed to those models. Those models are changing. And one of the examples that we often use is like a teenager. If you just leave the teenager to do anything, then, you pretty soon will see a problem. And we've seen many of those problems. So somebody actually in the organization needs to manage that model, needs to put the guardrails in place, needs to check that it's giving the right output, that is still sanitized, and that's still, according to the brand of the company. The other thing is what we call is sort of the machine learning engineers, right? So looking at the whole end-to-end pipeline, that needs to be engineered, meaning where do I get my data? How do I process the data? How do I feed it to the model? How do I manage the outputs? How do I make sure that outputs are in the production cycle? That is what we often call as a machine learning engineer. So there's already 3 new jobs, right, that's being paid at a high level at the moment that people can apply for.
You have heard. We are not going to lose jobs. Instead, we are going to have new jobs created by the emerging technologies of AI. And of course, yesterday, DG also spoke. We may experience a bit of, some may lose But then with innovation, things can come up. Now, any question from the audience? Raise up your hand. There. State your name and then pose your question. Then I have one here as well.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Mwanaid Mahiza, and I appreciate for giving me opportunity to speak and to ask questions. First, congratulate the presenters for their very informative presentations. And my question is very general. And it's something that I've been asking myself since we started the sessions. How can we leverage the application of AI to address our challenges in areas like agriculture, healthcare, in improvement of our education? And what are the indicators can possibly be used to assess whether AI has improved people's lives? My last question is, what are the regulatory frameworks that can be put in place so that the local ones actually, as the last presenter said, it should be customized and all that. So what are the possible regulation frameworks can be put in place so that to make the application of AI as beneficial as we can in our Tanzanian context? Thank you.
Okay, and then, yeah, do we still have time? Then another questions from here?
Yes, I'm Dr. Wanga from TNBC. I also commend the presenters for good job. But my challenge is, I has raised this question to Wangwe several times, that how can we use the AI to, to offend the hackers? Because most of the time, we have been talking about defending strategies. Even in most of the presentations from all of you, you have tried to indicate just we can, defend, we can, detect. But how can we use the AI to attack or offend the hackers or those who are enemies of so that we can progress? Otherwise, we can, most of the questions which are coming, how can we apply, because there are challenges which cannot be addressed without undertaking that offensive strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wangwe, pick that one. And you want to go, William?
In terms of the value it brings to the African continent, I'm going to mention two examples. And this is an example in agriculture in Kenya. A young lady, what she did was just to put cameras in the rural areas, right, in where they're doing subsistence farming. And all the camera did was, there was a little bit of AI that runs on the camera that looked at the vegetation, that looks at the plants, that can see whether the plants are sick or whether they're healthy, and can immediately give recommendation to the farmer. That had increased the crop by 30 to 40%. Now imagine what that would do to that subsistence farmer in the rural area. So immediately there's an example of something that was done. Another example is in the banks, where often, people sort of take advantage of the elderly that might not be digitally enabled, because they have to do in English. They don't necessarily understand the English. They just say yes for this policy. I'll pay so much per month. But now, in their own language, they can interrogate that policy. They can say, what would happen if I die at this age? How much would my family get? How much would I be able to spend for the funeral? In their own language. Now, You might think that's a simple thing, but that makes a big difference in that elderly lady's life, because she now knows. She now has the confidence. She can now make the right decision as to what policy she needs to take. So these are the small, I mean, I can go on and speak about many examples, and this is not Western, it's in Africa, happening in the most rural areas where they're using AI to benefit them. And there's huge value that has already been seen.
Exactly. Actually, yesterday, when I came here, I think the gentleman there behind, he was having a very good locally made product that even can check the crop and be able to tell whether it has what disease. Can you stand up? It can check what disease does it have, can answer different questions and all. I think we have started having this kind of products using AI in our local, we met with our local people here. So I think we have seen the impact. It's for us to be more innovative, to put more efforts, to research more, to learn more, and to do more to make sure that we make use of this AI productively and to enhance the way we do things in our daily life. One with that question that was asked by?
Thank you. Before going to Dr. Wanga's, I'd say a question which puts someone on the spotlight. I would comment a bit on Monaidi's questions. So we may give examples of applications where AI could be used to enhance our processes, but basically it would be endless, because what AI does, it basically enhances whatever a human being has ever done in this world. So it enhances the operations, and again, it has a component of continuously learning and improving. So if you speak of the capabilities of AI, they are just endless. It's just anything that a human being has ever done, but in an enhanced manner. Now coming back to the question which was directed to me on how we can use AI to offend, because so Dr. Wanga is saying that he wants to hear a comment from each of us about that question. So thank you for taking me out of the spotlight. If you talk of offensive security, of course, those are techniques, and it's just a matter of perception. So the same techniques that a security expert would use are the improved versions of what a hacker would use. So a hacker basically offends, and a security expert technically defends. But in order to defend, you should know how to offend. So these are things which are done spontaneously and interchangeably. It's like you speak to me and I speak back to you. So the offensive is which position are you sitting on? And it's more of a military issue, which I don't think we can dwell into, but those are techniques which are available, and our experts can always be trained on that.
Thank you very much, Wanga. I think time has never been our best ally. We have a lot of problem with time, always. So quickly, final thoughts?
Look, I think there's many opportunities in Africa, whether you use the offense to identify the cybersecurity, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in banking. My advice is just start. Pick one. There's a whole list that many of us presented. Pick one, do it, take that value to your clients and your customers and your citizens, and then build from there.
Some final thoughts?
Yeah, I would echo the same sentiment of AI becomes an enabling capacity. It becomes a force multiplier, right? If you're already good at offense, it makes you better at offense. If you're already good at agriculture, it makes you better at agriculture, right? It has the capacity to amplify what we're already doing and improve what we're already doing. It gives us better capacity for pacing and for volume. And I do recommend, as far as metrics of success, that gets really tricky, right? To try to identify outside of traditional mechanisms for measuring productivity gains, for measuring GDP, for measuring quality of life or life expectancy. Those are the broad strokes. But as far as at the individual level, that's absolutely going to depend on the application, right? Whether the capacity is improving or we're making progress. But absolutely, get started. Try to apply it where you already are, what you're already doing, so that you can then be the knowledgeable observer that's making sure that you're getting quality output from your AI tools.
Thank you, Sam Wango. Your final thoughts?
Thank you. So my thoughts are we shouldn't continue discuss in depth on the challenges of AI. Rather, we should shift the energy to how to embrace it. So if you don't know or use AI, you are the odd man out and you're losing out. So we should just start immediately pushing on the infrastructure needs, regulatory needs, getting the skills to our people, and making sure that each one of us becomes a good ambassador of AI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. AI is here to stay. We don't have too many options, but to embrace it with caution. Thank you very much, my panelists. It was really lovely having you all. I look forward to meet you next year. Thank you.
Another round of applause for the panel and their moderator. Thank you very much. This was a presentation that was supposed to happen